Awesome. Hey everyone, welcome to the Smart Economy Podcast. We're on day one of Permissionless III, and this is the first interview of the conference with Jack O'Halloran, the co-founder of SKALE Network. How are you doing today, Jack?
Doing good. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I want to start off all these interviews just by asking like a quick little intro, like who are you and how did you get into crypto, so that we can explain a little bit of context for like why we're here.
All right. Well, I come from the enterprise software world. Started my first tech company in 2005. We were acquired by Motorola. I was doing cryptography, security, essentially mobile device, enterprise software. The company was called Good Technology. I started my first company then in 2008, and in machine learning, AI, we actually had a digital currency, the first iteration of that product back in 2008, which was frankly just a little too ahead of its time. But we saw the power of AI, so I did that for a long time, and got involved with crypto. I think I was in China in 2013, and one of my friends was saying, "You must buy Bitcoin," and I went down the rabbit hole, and hey, I was starting my next company in 2017, and for me I couldn't think about anything other than smart contracts, decentralized systems, decentralized governance. I was just really inspired by Ethereum and the fact you could create a new business model for a company, and that was the innovation that captured me.
Sweet, yeah, you can tell that you were in AI back in 2008 because it was called machine learning back then.
Yeah. If you said AI back then, people were like, oh, and they'd like shame you in a meeting. It's not AI, it's not AI. I'm like, I mean advanced analytics, machine learning technology, and yeah, now I'm like, it was AI.
So were you caught up in like the ICO boom in 2017 and that's what drew you in, or were you really just kind of attracted to EVM and the power of smart contracts?
So for me it was the ability to create a different business model, okay? It was the first real like win-win-win business model, as I like to call it, because coming from traditional Web 2 or enterprise software, you're in this value extraction game. Yeah, you want to create a great product for your customers, but you want to get as much as possible out. And then crypto has this amazing business model where you have people that can do work, people that use a product, people that build and support a product, and you have this kind of like virtuous cycle between builders, kind of workers, i.e. people running nodes, or people like working in systems, people consuming or buying, and then you can create these I'd say like optimized marketplaces where everyone can win because of the way token economics function.
Yeah, so I think
and decentralization. Yeah,
I think crypto is so cool because for the first time ever, we have like baked into the tech stack like this economic layer that empowers people who utilize and build on top of the networks. So kind of like leveraging everything you've said, like how did that lead you to encapsulate the vision for SKALE?
Yeah.
When did you kind of like envision what SKALE could be?
Yeah, and it's interesting, my first company I started was called Incentiline. We were aligning incentives with this digital currency, and so the behavioral economics of blockchain tokenized systems is like mind-blowing. So you go down that rabbit hole, you're like, it's hard to get out of that, right? And so I had these ideas for different applications I wanted to start, because I thought, wow, like I could build this product and it would bring all this value back to users. I could build this product, and then I kept running into the scaling issue, and like all of a sudden CryptoKitties like went viral and Ethereum just went nuts, and we're like, ugh. And then I met Stan Kladko, who's a world-renowned cryptographer and physicist, and we were introduced by a couple of venture capitalists, and he had all these apps he wanted to build, and we kind of put our minds together. We're like, why don't we just build what we called middleware back then, which then kind of got to be called layer 2, and then kind of middleware, and then like alt layer 1. Like we kind of didn't really fit in a category because we designed SKALE to fix our own scaling problems. And Stan really was a genius that came up with this architecture. And then we decided, let's bring this to other builders, and we knew how to do that really well. And so yeah, that was the genesis of SKALE. And
so SKALE is an EVM chain.
Yep.
It's something that I noticed in like the description of it is that it's an app chain, and you hear a lot of app chains coming out of the Cosmos ecosystem. So how do you kind of like transpose being an app chain, this semi-L2, alt-L1, and kind of like provide this service for the EVM world and kind of like take what's best out of Cosmos and provide SKALE for EVM?
Yeah, and we were kind of building, I think, in sync with Cosmos. They were a little ahead of us. But what's different about SKALE is that you see this architecture now kind of in products like EigenLayer and Babylon Finance, where you have this asset on one chain and security of one chain that actually shares security with another chain. That's what SKALE does. So SKALE's tokens on the ETH mainnet, staking contracts are all on the ETH mainnet. And so the ETH mainnet actually provides foundational stake security back to the SKALE network. And then SKALE is this network, but what's different is it's one set of validators that can create many, many shards. And so really it's a sharded blockchain that leverages modularity, pooled and shared security. And so it has all these like hot buzzwords now. Now, the good news is I think the industry is maturing where people aren't trying to like, understand alphabet soup of marketing buzzwords. And the reality is like we're a consumer blockchain. We help consumer applications and business B2B2C applications that want to support lots of users, huge amount of transactions, and really like, bring mass adoption to blockchain. So that's what we do, and it's gasless. It's a gasless blockchain. So probably going to ask about that later.
Yeah,
I won't get into it now, but yeah, these architectural properties are all designed with a purpose. It's built different, we like to say, from day one, not to match a category description, but really to solve a problem for builders.
So would you say that kind of the explosion of adoption of L2s in the past year and a half, 2 years, kind of helped break down barriers to understand what SKALE offers?
Yeah, well, one interesting thing was you had to be a roll-up to have security, and then, or you had to be Bitcoin. Then all of a sudden you could be an alt layer one, you could be a different layer one, and the people are like, oh, that has good security. And then I think people kind of realize, well, networks like SKALE have tremendous security because they're really just proof of stake blockchains, but our connection back to Ethereum is additive for security. And I think sometimes we could get mixed around for people that are interested in these models of a sidechain, because sidechains have weak security, but SKALE, because of its integration to Ethereum and all these properties of having one big validator set in many small chains, like it gets around those issues that sidechains have. So yeah, these changes in the industry I think made people more open to innovation and recognize there's already some innovation that's like built, working, and has 5 million, active unique wallets a month.
Yeah. So you did mention earlier that SKALE is gasless. So can you just like describe why that is? Are people never paying gas fees, or are they paying gas when like the chain is like added to the state of Ethereum for security? Can you just like describe that background?
I say SKALE is very unique in how it's gasless. There's a lot of chains that are saying we're gasless. What they're doing is their consensus still makes validators compete and then issues a payment or a reward for each block, okay? And then when you do that, then you can be gasless, but you do it by way of kind of letting applications just pay for the gas, but then the unit economics aren't good. What SKALE does that's different is that at the consensus layer, there's no fees paid. The validators all actually work together, and then it's a Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus, so as soon as 2/3 of them agree, the block completes, but there's no payment. So the payment happens at the end of the month. All these validator nodes monitor each other, and then they have this score, and hey, assuming they're honest, they have good uptime, low latency, running the right hardware specs, then they all share equally in this bounty. And that bounty is the fees. So if you're an app and you say, hey, I want to go on this hub, I have to get by SKALE, pay a certain amount to like rent my space there. It's almost like there's a bunch of apartment buildings, and these developers can like rent a small unit or like a big 5-bedroom unit, and they have to pay their share of the rent for that cumulative rent for that building. But the unit economics are better because they're not paying by the night in a hotel. Like you pay in a hotel, it costs a lot more because someone may be there and won't be there, and you have to have this real supply-demand fluctuation. Our supply-demand fluctuation is at a chain level. So if things start getting overloaded, new chains can come into the network, and it can keep growing to support more demand.
So who are examples of the validator nodes? Are you guys because I work in an ecosystem that leverages BFT as well, and those validator nodes are kind of like approved or like given approval. So who participates in validation on SKALE's network? Yeah,
so right now I think there's like 40 some validator orgs, okay? And so the biggest validator companies in the world, like Blockdaemon, Staked, which is now part of Kraken, Chorus One, and number of other phenomenal topics. You can go to stakingrewards.com, see the whole list. Okay, so these entities are all running different nodes across the network, and our like centralization is actually very low in terms of our Satoshi score of just being able to like how many of these have to collude in order for the chain to break. So we're pretty strong position from that perspective.
Cool. So your talk here is about mainstream adoption, SKALE has approaching 45 million wallets, monthly active users are in the millions.
Yeah.
So like, how have you been able to achieve that? Are you, and maybe this will just give you a wide answer, are you going after specific verticals? Is it because of a specific vertical that you're seeing this? Is it a wide variety of different types of users? Maybe you could just kind of like use that hodgepodge.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think you look at the architecture of SKALE, and I think you look at every blockchain has to have this conversation, this community. These are all decentralized entities, right? And you have to come to some consensus around what's our strengths and weaknesses. And SKALE, I think, has limited weaknesses, but huge strengths. And those huge strengths go towards like high volume transactions, lots of users, you know, huge smart contracts. You want to like have like real gas hog contracts, like, because you're not as limited in the SKALE world because you can create, like, you can do more with a smart contract. And so gaming, Web3 AI products, DPIN products, these are, you know, right now I'd say like the three big categories. I think decentralized social is on the rise, it's coming. I think the legislation is going to make decentralized social far in, and I'd say like B2B2C consumer apps that leverage tokenization far more successful, because right now it's so hard to launch a token in the US and different areas. But those categories all, you know, we have lots of users and lots of transactions, lots of unique active wallets, because we target use cases that need that, and that's where the strengths of the SKALE network lie.
Yeah, and so I think of like the top 20 games on like in Web3 gaming in general, SKALE is host to like 5 of them.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You're clearly going after where the users are. Kind of like zooming out and wrapping up a little bit, you did mention that there are issues being in the States and with like launching tokens and things like that, and you are a US-based company. What have been your experiences in building here? Have you been eager to offshore possibly? Are you like digging in your heels and waiting to fight it out?
Yeah, well, I'd say one critical thing, if you want to operate in the US, you have to like truly be decentralized. And that's a huge part of the one, just I think like developer strategy. Like developers want decentralized systems with decentralized governance, and guess what, so do regulators, because if you have asymmetric information and you're centralized and you're not doing all these disclosures and securities compliance, that's where the issues lie, right? And so SKALE Labs is actually a builder group. Like we help support with code, we help support with awareness, marketing awareness, you know, business development, growth, et cetera. And then, but it's a decentralized entity. There's an entity in Liechtenstein that's the issuer. There's developer groups in Ukraine, in Lisbon. There's developer contributors all over the world. So there's this smattering of these humans and, you know, 50 some validator groups that are operating globally that all really come together to, and delegators all over the world that are all voting on, okay, should we do this? Should we do that? Like, so here's the thing, that stuff's important. I think it shouldn't go away, but it's so difficult. I look at infrastructure. Yeah, we can do that. We can figure that out. But I know so many builders are just trying to launch an app, and they're like, hey, I've got this ticketing app, and we're gonna like use like the tokens of utility in the product, and that's gonna help bootstrap our awareness, our initial growth. And it's really hard to do that in today's environment because there's not a lot of clarity, especially for those types of products. There's no way they can go and comply with like, you know, securities to, you know, be listed on NASDAQ or something, right? It's just a different model. So I think for the US to stay ahead, we need to have advanced legislation that is intelligent, that's specific to the needs of builders, and ultimately serves people. We have to protect consumers. There's predatory people out there doing bad stuff. We got to protect people, but we also need to like enable innovation to happen. Yeah.
It's a far cry from your days in the enterprise space.
Yeah. There's a very rigid set of rules, and you know, it's part of the fun in this world is like you have to figure things out, but at a certain point you're like, okay, like give us a framework and let us go.
Yeah. I mean, I've been advocating for more frameworks, so hopefully we can kind of see positive directions here in the States. Last question. I know it's kind of unfair because it's day one.
Yeah.
There hasn't even been a panel yet. You haven't even given your presentation yet. But what is kind of like a major walkaway that you're taking away from Permissionless 3?
Yeah, well, number one, Salt Lake City is a beautiful city. We're here at 70 degrees and it's clean. So really impressed with the city. Number two, this is a phenomenal place. I think there's just a lot of great people here and it's a good mix. Mm-hmm. So you've got developers, you've got people working at like institutional funds, you've got people that are enthusiasts that are here to learn, you've got like app builders, you've got this whole set of, I think it's a really good mix of people and yeah, so far so good.
Is this your first conference this year in the States?
I went to ETH Denver, and I've been to a lot of conferences, and I've been on the road. So
nice. Yeah, I'm just in general.
Yeah.
Like, are you feeling a vibe shift as each conference kind of progresses?
I think so. I think it was interesting. Last year I was at Token 2049 in Singapore, and it was like peak vibes. Everyone was like, yeah, and then I went right after to Masari, and it was like everything was about like compliance and governmental regulation, and it was like kind of depressing.
Yeah.
There was just like, and then I feel here there's just like kind of lifted optimism, and yeah, I think it's a good time to be building in Web3 right now.
Love it. Thank you for chatting with us, Jack.
Yeah, hey, thank you.
If you want to hear any more of our interviews, head over to www.smarteconomypodcast.com to catch the latest episodes.